Montserrat, a small village nestled in the misty mountains of northern Spain, has long been known for its ancient monastery and the faithful who tend to it. The stone walls, weathered by centuries of harsh winters and scorching summers, stand as silent witnesses to countless prayers and confessions. But in 1997, those sacred walls became keepers of a different kind of secret, one that would haunt the village for decades to come. Sister Elena Vasquez, a novice nun of just 21 years, entered the confessional on a cold November evening and was never seen again. The statistics are unsettling. Between 1990 and 2000, 11 young women disappeared within a 50-mile radius of Monserrate. Only Sister Elena had ties to the church. She went to confess her sins and vanished into thin air, recalls Father Domingo, now in his 80s, his hands trembling as he turns the pages of the monastery's visitor log from that fateful day. The last entry is hers, November 12, 1997, 7:42 p.m. The official investigation was closed after 3 months. No body, no evidence, no closure. Are you brave enough to learn what happened in the shadows of faith? What truth lies buried beneath decades of silence and prayer? The answer isn't found in superstition or the supernatural, but in something far more earthly and infinitely more terrifying. The monastery of San Bartolomé de Monserrate dates back to the 15th century, its Gothic architecture imposing against the backdrop of jagged mountain peaks. Visitors often describe an unsettling quality to the acoustics, how whispers seem to travel through the stone corridors long after they should have faded. The air carries the perpetual scent of incense and candle wax, masking other odors that might otherwise raise questions. By the late 1990s, the monastery had become home to only 8 nuns and 2 priests, a shadow of its former prominence. Among them was Father Mateo Navarro, who had arrived in 1995 from Vatican City, a prestigious assignment for the remote location. His reputation preceded him. A brilliant theologian with connections to influential cardinals and a special interest in religious ecstasy and mystical experiences. Spain, in the late 1990s, was a country caught between traditional Catholic values and rapid modernization. Young women like Elena were often caught in this tension, raised in faith but exposed to expanding worldviews. The daughter of a devout family from Madrid, Elena had arrived at San Bartolomé only 6 months before her disappearance, described by Mother Superior Agatha as unusually perceptive, perhaps too questioning for her own spiritual journey. What the official reports fail to mention is the letter Elena had mailed to her sister 3 weeks before vanishing, sealed and marked, "Open only if something happens to me." That letter remained untouched for 7 years, its existence unknown to investigators. Miguel Ortiz, a shepherd who grazed his flock on the monastery's surrounding hills, was the first to notice something amiss. It was just after sunset, he testified to local police. "I saw Sister Elena running from the east wing, not wearing her habit, just a white nightgown. She looked terrified. Then Father Mateo appeared at the doorway watching. When he saw me in the distance, he raised his hand in blessing. But it felt like a warning." The police dismissed Miguel's account. After all, he was known in the village for occasional overindulgence in homemade spirits. But Miguel insists to this day about what he saw next. "She stopped at the edge of the forest and looked back at the monastery. Then she made the sign of the cross, backward. I still see it when I close my eyes." The following morning, Elena was reported missing. Her cell was found in perfect order, bed made, prayer books aligned, rosary missing. Father Mateo led the first prayer service for her safe return, noting that some souls wander in search of deeper truths before finding their way home to God. Within weeks, the other young novices began to change. Sister Lucia, once known for her beautiful singing voice, fell silent. Sister Maria developed a persistent tremor in her right hand. Sister Carmen, Elena's closest friend, began sleepwalking, always toward the monastery's forbidden east wing. Mother Superior Agatha noticed these changes but attributed them to grief and anxiety over Elena's disappearance. The girls are merely processing their emotions, she told the local doctor, who suggested psychological evaluations. Prayer and time will heal their distress. But it was what happened to Sister Carmen that truly disturbed the older nuns. After returning from a private counseling session with Father Mateo, she no longer mentioned Elena. When shown a photograph of her friend, Carmen stared blankly and asked, was she from another order? Her personality flattened. Her movements became mechanical. The vibrant, compassionate young woman who had joined the monastery to serve the poor now spent hours staring at the chapel wall, murmuring the same prayer over and over. Sister Dolores, the monastery's oldest resident at 79, was the only one who openly expressed concern. "They come back different," she whispered to her niece during a rare family visit. "Empty eyes, cold hands. They smell of medicines we don't keep here." 3 days after this conversation, Sister Dolores suffered a stroke that left her unable to speak, a condition the visiting doctor found unusually specific for a cerebral event. Among the young nuns, only Sister Isabella remained herself, watchful, resilient, and increasingly suspicious. While others slept, she began keeping vigil, documenting changes in her sisters through coded entries in her prayer journal. Using symbols disguised as religious notations, she mapped the monastery, marking rooms where strange sounds echoed at night and cataloging the comings and goings of Father Mateo. Isabella noticed a pattern. Each young nun who spent time alone with Father Mateo in the East Wing emerged with the same vacant expression. She also discovered that once a month, unusual packages arrived from a medical supply company in Barcelona. Deliveries always received personally by Father Mateo and carried to the locked section of the East Wing. One night, following Vespers, Isabella overheard Mother Superior Agatha arguing with Father Mateo. "She is not ready for the procedure. Her faith is still too wavering." To which he replied, "It is not your decision to make. The Cardinal has approved my methods for addressing spiritual contamination." Isabella realized with growing horror that she was next. The following evening, Mother Superior informed her that Father Mateo wished to begin special spiritual counseling with her in the East Wing Chapel tomorrow at midnight. Isabella knew she had to act quickly. That night, as heavy rain pounded against the monastery windows, she slipped a small wooden crucifix under her mattress, a hiding place for the tiny key she had discovered weeks earlier, fallen from Father Mateo's pocket during morning prayer. The key was unusual, made of brass with a peculiar series of notches that suggested a lock far more sophisticated than the ancient doors of San Bartolomé. Feigning illness, Isabella missed evening prayers, using the time to prepare. She sewed a small pocket into her undergarment, large enough to hide the monastery's smallest camera, an old Kodak, gifted by tourists years earlier, still containing half a roll of unused film. As thunder crashed outside, Isabella whispered prayers that were genuine pleas for protection rather than the ritual recitations she'd been taught. Just before midnight, a firm knock at her door announced Mother Superior Agatha, her face a mask of stern devotion. "Father Mateo awaits you for spiritual cleansing," she said, her eyes never quite meeting Isabella's. "Your questions and doubts will be resolved tonight." The East Wing corridor was lit only by sparse candles, their flames creating grotesque shadows that danced across the stone walls. At its end stood a heavy oak door, one Isabella had never seen opened. Father Mateo waited beside it, dressed not in his usual cassock, but in what appeared to be a white medical coat, partially concealed beneath his clerical stole. "Sister Isabella," he smiled, though the expression never reached his eyes. "Your sisters have all benefited from our special sacrament of purification. Tonight, you too will experience perfect communion with the divine, free from doubt, free from the burdens of individual thought. As he turned to unlock the door, Isabella glimpsed what lay beyond. Not the expected chapel, but a room with walls of gleaming tile. Metal cabinets lined one wall. A hospital bed, fitted with restraints, occupied the center. The scent that wafted out was not incense, but antiseptic. "This is not God's work," Isabella whispered, backing away. Father Matteo's face hardened. "This is the future of faith, sister. Science and religion united. The Cardinal himself has blessed our research into neurological adjustments that strengthen devotion. Those who undergo the procedure emerge truly devoted, their minds emptied of all but absolute faith." Behind him, Mother Superior produced a syringe. "It will be easier if you don't resist, child." Elena fought, and see what became of her. In that moment of revelation, Isabella made her choice. With strength born of desperation, she shoved both of them aside and fled down the corridor, the camera bouncing against her ribs. Behind her, Father Matteo's voice echoed, "Lock the monastery. The girl has been overcome by demonic influence." The rain had intensified, turning the monastery grounds into a treacherous maze of mud and shadow. Isabella ran toward the cemetery, knowing its old mausoleum contained a forgotten passage once used by monks during the Spanish Civil War. The sound of dogs barking split the night. The monastery groundskeeper's hunting hounds had been released. Reaching the mausoleum, Isabella struggled with its rusted gate. From her pocket, she withdrew Father Matteo's key on instinct, and was shocked when it fit perfectly. Inside, the stone floor bore a metal ring nearly invisible among the dust and debris of decades. Pulling with all her strength, Isabella revealed the narrow stairs leading into darkness. Hours later, soaked and shivering, she emerged miles away in the foothills. By dawn, she had reached the neighboring village of Aldea Pequeña, where she sought sanctuary with Father Thomas, an elderly priest known for his dispute with San Bartolome's leadership years earlier. "I always knew Matteo's research went beyond theological study," Father Thomas said grimly after hearing her story. "Before my transfer, I found medical journals in his quarters, articles on experimental neurosurgery and chemical suppression of the brain's frontal lobe. Together, they developed a plan. Isabella would document everything while Father Thomas contacted an investigative journalist from Madrid who had previously written about medical ethics violations. The film from Isabella's camera was developed, revealing horrifying images: the converted operating room, medical equipment bearing the insignia of a pharmaceutical company, and most damning, a ledger showing payments for each subject successfully processed. For 2 weeks, Isabella remained hidden in Father Thomas's modest home, transcribing her observations and helping the journalist build a case. Then came the night that changed everything. A frantic pounding at the door revealed a rain-drenched Sister Carmen, the vacant expression replaced by panic. "They know I've helped you escape," she gasped. "I've been pretending, Isabella. The procedure didn't fully work on me. I've been waiting, watching. And I know where Elena is." According to Carmen, Elena had not escaped that night, but had been taken to a hidden section of the monastery's crypt after her treatment failed. She fought too hard during the procedure. There was damage. Father Matteo keeps her sedated, but alive. Proof of his methods for when the Cardinal visits. The three formulated a desperate rescue plan. Using the journalist's press credentials, they would gain access to the monastery under the pretense of writing about its historical significance. Carmen would create a distraction, while Isabella and the journalist Miguel Sanchez located the hidden crypt entrance. Their plan proceeded smoothly at first. Mother Superior, though suspicious, could hardly refuse a reporter from one of Spain's most prestigious newspapers. As Carmen engaged the remaining nuns with a deliberate medical emergency, Isabella led Miguel to the chapel's confessional, the starting point of a hidden passage according to Carmen's instructions. Behind the ornate wooden panel, where priests had heard centuries of confessions, they discovered a narrow stone corridor, descending steeply into darkness. The air grew thick with the scent of mold and something medicinal. Isabella's hand trembled as she swept her flashlight across ancient stone walls, now fitted with modern electrical conduits. The passage ended at a metal door with a keypad lock, technology jarringly out of place in the centuries-old monastery. "Carmen gave me the code," Isabella whispered, entering the 6 digits that corresponded to Elena's birthday. The door opened with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a chamber that merged medieval architecture with modern medical equipment. Monitors beeped softly, IV bags hung from stands beside what appeared to be an ancient stone altar, now fitted with padded restraints. And there lay Eleanor, pale as the sheets that covered her, thin to the point of emaciation, her head partially shaved and marked with the unmistakable scars of surgical intervention. But she was breathing. As Miguel frantically photographed the scene, Isabella rushed to Eleanor's side, gently calling her name. Eleanor's eyes opened, vacant at first, then flickering with faint recognition. "Isabella," she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. "Did they take your thoughts too?" "No, Elena. I escaped. We're here to take you home." As Miguel helped disconnect the monitoring equipment, a metal box beneath Elena's bed caught Isabella's attention. Inside lay personal effects confiscated from patients, including Elena's missing rosary, its beads worn smooth from desperate prayers. They had almost reached the passage entrance when alarms began to blare throughout the monastery. "The emergency exit," Isabella said urgently. "We can't go back the way we came." Miguel pointed to a narrow archway nearly hidden behind medical cabinets. "That must be it. The old catacombs should lead to the cemetery." As they maneuvered Elena's weakened form through the ancient tunnel, footsteps and voices echoed behind them. "They're coming," Miguel warned, his camera clutched protectively against his chest. Evidence they couldn't afford to lose. The catacombs beneath San Bartolome formed a labyrinth of narrow passages, their walls lined with the remains of monks who had died centuries earlier. Isabella led the way, her flashlight beam cutting through darkness that seemed to absorb light itself. Behind her, Miguel supported Eleanor, whose legs threatened to collapse with each step. "They've used a compound on me," Eleanor managed between labored breaths. "Something to keep me compliant. My thoughts, they come and go." The sound of pursuit grew louder, flashlight beams bouncing off stone walls behind them, the urgent commands of Father Mateo echoing through the tunnels. "Find them. The Cardinal arrives tomorrow." "Nothing must compromise our work." At a junction where 3 passages converged, Isabella hesitated. The path ahead split again, each option disappearing into identical darkness. Elena, in a moment of clarity, pointed weakly to the rightmost tunnel. "This one. I remember, they brought me through here once. For tests." They had advanced perhaps 50 meters when the ceiling began to drop, forcing them to crouch and eventually crawl. Elena's breathing grew more labored, her movements sluggish. "I can't," she whispered. "Just a little further," Isabella urged, though uncertainty gnawed at her. The passage had begun to narrow alarmingly, and the air grew thin and stale. Miguel, bringing up the rear, suddenly froze. "Listen," he hissed. The sounds of pursuit had ceased. Instead, they heard the mechanical grind of something heavy sliding into place. "They're sealing the tunnels," Elena whispered, terror bringing momentary lucidity. "They've done this before, when inspectors came, when questions were asked." Panic threatened to overwhelm them, but Isabella forced herself to think logically. The monastery was built on Roman ruins. These tunnels must connect to the old aqueduct system. We keep moving forward. What followed was a nightmarish journey through increasingly constricted spaces. Elena faded in and out of consciousness, forcing Miguel and Isabella to drag her through sections where the ceiling dropped to mere inches above the floor. Their flashlight batteries weakened, the beam growing dimmer with each passing minute. After what seemed like hours, they felt a faint breeze, the first hint of fresh air. The passage widened, eventually opening into a chamber where moonlight filtered through a rusted grate above. Miguel boosted Isabella up first, then carefully passed the semi-conscious Elena through the opening before climbing out himself. They emerged in a ravine nearly a mile from the monastery, hidden by dense forest. Dawn was breaking as they stumbled onto a rural road where, by miraculous fortune, a farmer's truck was passing. Seeing their desperate condition, the old man asked no questions as he drove them directly to the hospital in the nearest town. What followed should have been justice, but reality proved far more complicated. Elena was admitted with severe malnutrition and unexplained neurological symptoms. Miguel's photographs and Isabella's testimony were presented to regional authorities. An investigation was ordered. 3 days later, before formal charges could be filed, a fire broke out in the east wing of the monastery. By the time emergency services arrived, the entire structure had been consumed by flames so intense they melted stone. Official reports listed Father Matteo, Mother Superior Agatha, and 3 other nuns as casualties. When investigators finally entered the charred ruins, they found the crypt and tunnels completely collapsed, all evidence destroyed. Most disturbing of all, the hospital reported that Elena Vasquez had disappeared from her bed during the night shift, her current whereabouts unknown. Miguel's camera was stolen from his hotel room. The journal Isabella had kept was found burned in a trash can behind the police station. Within weeks, the investigation was officially closed, attributed to an unfortunate accident caused by aging electrical systems. Father Thomas alone continued to seek answers, writing letters to church authorities that went unanswered. 6 months after the fire, he too disappeared, leaving behind a half-finished letter mentioning a cardinal's visit to his parish. Isabella, branded unstable by official reports, retreated to her family's home in northern Spain. Neighbors described her as changed, quiet, watchful, prone to staring at the walls. She refused to discuss the monastery or Elena, except to say once to a childhood friend, "They found a different way to silence me." For 21 years, the events at San Bartolomé faded into local legend, a ghost story told to tourists visiting the picturesque ruins. Then, in the summer of 2018, an archaeological team surveying the site for potential restoration made a discovery that reopened old wounds. Beneath the collapsed bell tower, preserved in a small cavity untouched by the fire, they found a metal box sealed with wax. Inside was Elena's rosary, wrapped in pages torn from medical journals, articles authored by Father Matteo under a different name. The pages detailed experimental procedures combining psychoactive compounds with targeted brain stimulation to eliminate cognitive resistance to spiritual authority. More disturbing were the handwritten notes in the margins referencing subjects 117 and their post-procedure compliance ratings. Elena was listed as Subject 11, failed integration, maintained for observation. The final page contained a list of monasteries and convents across Europe with a single sentence at the bottom. The procedure continues with improvements at all designated facilities, with full Vatican Authorization Protocol 157b. When news of the discovery broke, authorities launched a new investigation, but key evidence had long since vanished. The pharmaceutical company mentioned in the documents had been dissolved in 2002. The cardinal who had supposedly authorized the research had died in 2010. Medical records for the nuns had been destroyed in a database migration error. Perhaps most telling was the response from church authorities, not denial, but silence. Official inquiries received only vague acknowledgments that historical allegations are being reviewed internally. Families of the missing nuns formed an advocacy group, demanding answers that never came. Elena's parents died still searching for their daughter. Isabella, contacted by journalists seeking comment on the discovery, was found to have committed suicide 3 years earlier, leaving behind only a cryptic note. They found a way into my dreams. The Rosary itself disappeared from police evidence storage within a week of its discovery. The archaeological team's photographs of the documents were declared inconclusive by experts hired by the church. Today, the ruins of San Bartolome stand as a popular tourist attraction, its dark history sanitized into a tale of tragic accident. Visitors walk unknowingly above collapsed tunnels where evidence of unconscionable acts lies buried. Tour guides mention the fire but omit any reference to the missing nuns or the experiments. Miguel Sanchez, now in his 60s and long since discredited as a journalist, still visits the site each November 12th, placing a single white rose on the steps of the ruined confessional. The truth is still down there, he tells anyone willing to listen. And somewhere, so are they. In a small village 30 miles from Monserrate, an elderly woman tends a garden at a hospice run by a secular charity. Patients describe her as kind but distant, her eyes holding secrets too heavy to share. She never speaks of her past, but nurses have noticed she keeps a peculiar item hidden beneath her pillow. A single rosary bead, somehow salvaged from a fire that should have destroyed everything. Some nights, when the moon is full and the winds blow from the mountains, she walks the hospice grounds, her lips moving in what appears to be prayer. But those who listen closely report she isn't reciting any known devotion. She's reciting names. 17 names, over and over like a sacred litany of remembrance. The story of San Bartolome reminds us of a timeless truth. When faith becomes a shield for power rather than a path to compassion, its darkest practitioners will sacrifice anything, even the very souls they claim to save, upon the altar of absolute control.